The transport shuttle hummed as it descended toward the barren moon below. Inside, 47 cadets from different worlds sat in nervous silence. Daehyun pressed his forehead against the cold window, watching the gray surface grow larger. Rocks and dust stretched as far as he could see. No trees, no water. Just endless emptiness. Instructor Vorn stood at the front of the shuttle. His forearms crossed over his chitinous chest. His multifaceted eyes scanned the young faces before him. Vorn had taught at the Galactic Military Academy for 40 standard years. He had seen thousands of cadets come and go. This exercise never changed. Listen carefully, Vorn's voice clicked through the translator. You have 6 hours. Your task is simple. Make a weapon. Use whatever materials you find on the surface. The quality of your weapon determines your grade. Fail this test and you repeat the entire semester. A nervous murmur rippled through the cadets. Daehyun stayed quiet. He pulled out a small notebook from his pocket and checked his equipment list. 1 survival knife. 1 length of rope. 1 water canteen. Basic supplies, nothing more. Beside him, Mireille fidgeted with her scanner. She was the only other human on this shuttle. They had grown up in the same district in Seoul before joining the academy together. This should be easy, she whispered. Find a sharp rock, tie it to a stick, done. Daehyun nodded but said nothing. His mind was already working through possibilities. A weapon singular, but the instructor never said only 1 weapon. He filed that thought away. The shuttle touched down with a soft thud. The rear hatch hissed open and hot, dry air rushed inside. Vorn gestured toward the exit. You will be dropped in separate zones. Each zone has similar resources. No communication devices. No outside help. When the timer ends, we collect you. Begin when you reach your assigned position. One by one, the cadets filed out. Daehyun watched as Timin, a massive Gorvax with gray skin like stone, lumbered toward his zone. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall. His arms were thick as tree trunks. He would probably just rip a boulder from the ground and call it a club. Hannah, the Velthian squad leader, moved with graceful confidence. Her species had natural grace and precision. She would make something elegant, probably a bow or spear. Everything about her was efficient and perfect. Cadet Daehyun, Zone 23, Vorn announced. Daehyun shouldered his pack and walked toward his assigned area. The ground crunched beneath his boots. Heat radiated from the rocks. He passed scattered debris from old mining operations, rusted metal, broken equipment, fragments of polymer containers. The landing zone disappeared behind a ridge of stone. When he reached Zone 23, a small beacon marked the boundary. A red light blinked twice, then turned green. The timer had started. Daehyun stood still. He closed his eyes and listened. Wind scraped across stone. Nothing else. He opened his eyes and began to walk in a slow circle, examining everything. Other cadets would rush to grab the first useful object they found. Humans learned differently. His grandfather had taught him that. Old Man Park had survived 3 wars on Earth. He built tools from nothing, fixed machines with spare parts, and never threw anything away. Take your time, boy, he used to say in Korean while they worked in his cluttered workshop. See everything first? Then decide. Daehyun found a flat rock and sat down. He pulled out his notebook and began sketching a map of his zone. He marked locations of metal scraps, identified 3 types of stone with different hardness levels, noted where tough plant fibers grew in cracks between rocks, and spotted a small deposit of yellowish clay near a dried stream bed. 15 minutes passed. He had not touched a single material yet. Above, monitoring drones circled silently. In the command center aboard the orbital station, Instructor Vorn watched multiple screens showing cadet progress. Timin had already begun smashing rocks to find one with the right weight. Hannah was carefully stripping bark from one of the rare twisted bushes. A Krellian cadet was sharpening a piece of scrap. Metal against stone. Vorn's attention shifted to screen 23. The human sat motionless, writing in a book. Is his zone defective? Asked an assistant instructor. No, Vorn clicked thoughtfully. He's thinking. Thinking? The others are working. Humans think differently. Watch. On screen 23, Daehyun finally stood. He walked to a piece of curved metal, examined it, and nodded to himself. Then he moved to a cluster of fibrous plants and began pulling them from the ground. His hands moved with sudden purpose as if a switch had been flipped. Daehyun laid out his materials in neat rows. Metal pieces here. Stones there. Fibers and clay in separate piles. He organized everything like his grandfather's workshop back home. A place for everything. He picked up his survival knife and began cutting strips from the fibrous plants. The material was tough and stringy, perfect for cordage. While his hands twisted fibers into rope, his eyes scanned his materials again. His mind was no longer thinking about one weapon. It was thinking about many. The other cadets had been raised in cultures where specialization mattered. A Velthian made bows because their physiology suited archery. A Gorvax made clubs because they valued strength. Each species had evolved with certain advantages, and they built weapons that matched those advantages. Humans had no such specialization. Earth's ancient ancestors had no claws, no venom, no thick hide. They survived by using everything, by adapting, by making tools for every situation. Daehyun finished his first length of cordage and set it aside. He picked up a sharp stone and began shaping it. Not perfect, but functional. He could make better. He could make many. His hands worked steadily. His breathing fell into a rhythm. In his mind, he was back in his grandfather's workshop, surrounded by shelves of tools and parts. More is better than best, the old man would say. 1 perfect knife is useless if you lose it. 3 okay knives mean you always have options. The sun climbed higher. Heat shimmered off the rocks. Sweat dripped down Daehyun's face, but he did not stop. He completed a simple sling and tested its motion. Good. He set it with his cordage and picked up a long metal rod. 4 hours remained. In the command center. Vorn watched the human work. Something felt different about this cadet's approach, but he could not identify what. The human moved efficiently but not frantically. Methodically but not slowly. All cadets are progressing normally, the assistant reported. Estimated completion time for most is 4 to 5 hours. Vorn nodded. And the human? Also normal, sir. He appears to be making a spear. But Vorn noticed something odd. After finishing the spear, the human did not stop to rest. Did not test it extensively. He simply set it aside and reached for more materials. Perhaps the first weapon had flaws. Perhaps the human was starting over. Vorn watched for another minute, then moved his attention to other screens. The test was standard. Nothing unusual ever happened. He did not notice when Daehyun finished his second weapon. Or his third. The human's pile of materials was shrinking. His pile of completed items was growing. And he was smiling. 3 hours into the test, most cadets had nearly completed their weapons. Tiemann stood back and admired his club. He had found a dense piece of metal girder, wrapped one end with leather strips for grip, and balanced it perfectly for his massive hands. He swung it through the air with a satisfied grunt. The weapon suited him. Heavy, straightforward, effective. Hana finished binding the last section of her bow. She had carved it from a piece of flexible composite material, probably from an old mining tool. The curve was elegant and symmetric. She tested the string tension and smiled. 3 arrows lay beside her, each one straight and sharp. Perfect, as expected from AVL Tada Zone 12. A Krelian cadet named Vex polished his blade against a smooth stone. The metal gleamed in the harsh sunlight. He had spent 2 hours grinding and shaping it. The edge could split hairs. He wrapped the handle with cloth and held it up to the light. Beautiful work. These cadets now rested in the shade, drinking water and waiting for retrieval. They had completed the assignment. 1 weapon. Mission accomplished. In Zone 23. Daehyun had not stopped moving. His 5th weapon lay completed beside the others. A throwing axe made from a wedge-shaped piece of metal bound to a balanced handle. He tested the weight, nodded, and set it with the growing collection. Sling, spear, knife, short club, throwing axe. He looked at his remaining materials and calculated. 2.5 hours left. Plenty of time. His hands moved to a flexible piece of polymer. He began shaping it into a bow frame. While the frame set in the hot sun, he twisted more plant fibers into bowstring. No wasted time. No wasted motion. Every second had purpose. Dae-hyun hummed an old Korean folk song his grandmother used to sing. The melody helped him keep rhythm. Cut, twist, bind, test. Cut, twist, bind, test. His grandfather had taught him to work this way. Steady hands, clear mind, full heart, the old man would say dot above. The monitoring drones continued their lazy circles. In the command center, a junior technician frowned at her screen. Instructor Vorn? I'm getting unusual readings from Zone 23. Vorn looked up from his datapad. Define unusual. The material consumption rate is very high. The human has used 70% of available resources in his zone. Most cadets use 20 to 30%. Vorn's antennae twitched. Is he wasting materials? I do not think so. But the AI flagged his zone for review. Vorn pulled up camera feed 23 on the main screen. The human sat cross-legged on the ground, surrounded by objects. Multiple objects. Vorn counted quickly. 6 distinct items. No, 7. The human was working on an 8th. Are those all weapons? Vorn asked. The technician ran a scan. According to combat classification standards. Yes, sir. All functional weapons. Different types. An assistant instructor leaned closer to the screen. Is he allowed to make more than one? Vorn reviewed the test parameters in his mind. The instructions were clear. Make a weapon, singular, standard phrasing used for 300 years across every academy facility. But the rules did not explicitly say make only one weapon. Technically, there's no rule against it, Vorn admitted. But no cadet has ever made multiple weapons. Why would they? The task is to demonstrate resourcefulness and skill, not quantity. Humans are new to the coalition, another instructor observed. Perhaps they misunderstood the assignment. Vorn watched the screen. The human did not look confused. He worked with clear purpose, moving from one project to the next with practiced efficiency. This was not misunderstanding. This was intentional. Keep monitoring, Vorn ordered. Alert me if anything else unusual occurs. But Vorn found himself unable to look away from screen 23. Dae-hyun finished the bow and strung it. He tested the draw. Good tension. He set it aside and began making arrows. Not just 3 like Hannah, he made 7, using every straight piece of material he could find. Some had metal tips. Others had fire-hardened wooden points. Different arrows for different purposes. While the clay dried on his arrow tips, he turned his attention to a new project. A blowgun. Simple design, hollow tube, dart projectiles. He remembered a documentary about indigenous human tribes who used poison darts for hunting. Dae-hyun had no poison, but he could coat the darts in the irritating sap from one of the local plants. Not lethal, but effective. His mind worked through possibilities like a computer running programs. What else could he make? What other situations might require different tools? A net, weighted at the corners. Useful for entanglement, a garrote. Simple wire or strong cord. Quiet and efficient fire starters. Not technically weapons, but fire was always useful. Dae-hyun glanced at the sun. 2 hours remaining. He worked faster. In other zones, cadets began to nap or practice with their completed weapons. Mireille sat in the shade, her toxic dart system ready beside her. She had extracted venom from a local insect and coated 6 darts. Clever use of xenobiology. She felt proud. She wondered how Dae-hyun was doing. Probably built some practical spear and was now resting like a normal person. Dae-hyun was always efficient but never showy. She would be very surprised. Back in Zone 23, Dae-hyun completed his 10th weapon. A bola made from 3 stones wrapped in leather pouches, connected by cords. Excellent for taking down fast targets. He tested the spin and smiled. 11. A crossbow. Smaller and simpler than the bow, but more powerful. 12. A weighted club with metal studs. 13. Short stabbing sword made from a long piece of sharpened metal. 14. Throwing knives. He made 3 of them from flat metal pieces. His pile of completed weapons grew. Daehyun organized them by type. Ranged weapons here. Melee weapons there. Throwing weapons in the middle, like his grandfather's workshop. Everything in its place. In the command center. More instructors gathered around screen 23. Word had spread about the unusual human. Conversations stopped as they watched him work. How many is that now? Someone asked. The technician checked her count. 17 functional weapons. He is working on number 18. Impossible. The time limit is clearly not a problem for him. Vorn felt a strange sensation in his thorax. Confusion mixed with something else. Respect? Concern? He was not sure. In 40 years of teaching, he had never seen this. Should we stop him? An assistant asked. On what grounds? Vorn replied. He is not breaking any rules. He is not using unauthorized tools. He is simply making weapons. As instructed, but this is not normal. No, Vorn agreed. It is not? Daehyun finished a crude flamethrower made from a hollow tube and compressed plant oils. It would only work once, maybe twice, but fire was a universal language of violence. Every species feared burning. 19 weapons. He looked at his remaining materials. Still enough for more. The human part of his brain, the part shaped by millions of years of survival on Earth, would not let him stop while resources remained. Waste was failure. Preparation was life. His ancestors had walked out of Africa with nothing but stones and sticks. They had conquered every environment on Earth, deserts, jungles, frozen, tundras, mountains. They did not do this through strength or speed. They did it through relentless adaptation and the simple refusal to accept limitations. One weapon? No, many weapons. Always many. Daehyun began working on his 20th creation. A strangling cord with handles at each end. Simple but effective. In the command center, Vorn made a decision. I am going to observe his zone directly. Prepare a stealth drone with close monitoring capabilities. Sir, that is highly irregular, so is this entire situation. The stealth drone launched silently. It descended toward Zone 23, its cameras focusing on the human cadet who had somehow turned a simple test into something unprecedented. Daehyun did not notice the drone. He was singing again, that old folk song in Korean, his hands moving in time with the melody. 21 weapons. Complete. 20-2 in progress. And the human showed no signs of stopping. 1 hour remained. In the command center, 12 instructors now crowded around the main screen. Classes had been paused. Other monitoring stations sat abandoned. Everyone wanted to see the human in Zone 23. Daehyun worked on his 22nd weapon, a weighted net made from woven plant fibers with stones tied at each corner. His fingers moved automatically, braiding and knotting without conscious thought. His mind was already planning the next item. Instructor Vorn watched through the stealth drone's high-resolution camera. He could see every detail now. The human's face showed concentration but not stress. His breathing was steady, his movements efficient. This was not frantic rushing. This was practiced skill. How is this possible? Asked a Velthian instructor named Lyra. My species trains for years to achieve this level of crafting speed. He makes it look casual. Humans are new to the coalition, Vorn replied slowly. We have only basic data on their psychology and capabilities. Perhaps we underestimated them. A Gorvax instructor rumbled in his deep voice. Strength matters more than speed. One good weapon beats many poor ones. Are they poor quality? Vorn asked. Scan them again. Full analysis. The technician ran detailed scans on every completed weapon in Zone 23. Data scrolled across secondary screens. Tensile strength. Balance points. Structural integrity. Effectiveness ratings. Sir, every weapon meets minimum combat standards. 17 of them exceed standards. 3 are rated as excellent quality given available materials. Silence filled the command center. He made excellent weapons, Lyra said quietly, while also making 21 others? How? Vorn had no answer. He watched as Daehyun completed the net and immediately picked up a long piece of metal tubing. The human examined it, held it to his eye to check if it was hollow, and nodded to himself. What is he making now? Someone asked. Daehyun began packing clay into one end of the tube. He found small metal fragments and mixed them with the clay. Then he created a simple fuse using plant fibers soaked in oil. A bomb, the technician said. He's making an explosive device. Is that allowed? Vorn checked the rules again. The test says make a weapon. It does not specify type. An explosive is a weapon. But that requires chemistry knowledge, engineering. Most cadets do not. He is human, Vorn interrupted. Check their planet's history file. Search for technological development timeline. The technician pulled up Earth's data. Her eyes widened as she read. Their species developed explosives 3,000 years ago. Firearms 1,000 years ago. Nuclear weapons 300 years ago. They had been making weapons their entire recorded history. Every species makes weapons, Lyra objected, not like this. The technician highlighted sections of the file. Earth had continuous warfare for thousands of years. Multiple conflicts happening simultaneously on different continents. Their military innovation rate is 47 times higher than the galactic average. Vorn felt his antennae droop. 47 times? Yes, sir. Humans spent more of their civilization's existence at war than at peace. Weapon development was constant. Competition between groups drove rapid innovation. Lyra moved closer to screen 23. So this is normal for them? Making many weapons quickly? Apparently so. On screen, Daehyun carefully set aside his primitive explosive device. He hummed his folk song and turned to his remaining materials. So little left now. But enough for one or two more items. He made a garrote from braided wire. Strong and flexible. Good for silent elimination. That was weapon 20-3 got for his final creation. He gathered scraps. Bits of metal. Pieces of stone. Fragments of hardened polymer. He created a crude but functional Morning Star handle with a spiked ball at the end. Brutal and effective. 20-4 weapons total. Daehyun sat back and surveyed his work. He organized them again, making sure everything was secure for transport. Some weapons he could carry easily. Others needed to be carefully packed. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out his notebook and began writing detailed descriptions of each weapon. Design notes. Material specifications. Potential improvements if better resources were available. What is he doing now? Lyra asked. Documenting, Vorn said. He is treating this like a research project. Daehyun finished his notes and checked the position of the sun. 40 minutes left. He could probably make one or two more weapons, but his materials were nearly exhausted. Besides, 24 felt like a good number. It was complete. Balanced, he stood and stretched. His back ached from bending over his work. His hands had several small cuts from handling sharp materials, but he felt satisfied. Good work. His grandfather would be proud. Daehyun walked to a shaded area and sat down. He drank water from his canteen and ate a ration bar. Rest was important. No point exhausting himself completely. In the command center, the instructors exchanged confused glances. He stopped, someone observed. He still has time. Still has some materials. Maybe he is finally tired. Vorn studied the human's face on the screen. Daehyun looked calm, content, not exhausted, not stressed, just ... He stopped because he decided he had enough, Vorn realized. Not because he ran out of time or materials. He chose to stop. How many weapons is enough? Lyra asked. For him? 24, apparently. A younger instructor, a Krellian named Sek, spoke up hesitantly. Instructor Vorn, I do not understand. Why did he make so many? The task was to make a weapon. One weapon. He must have misunderstood. Vorn considered this. Did he misunderstand? Or did we not specify clearly enough? The instructions have been the same for 300 years. Yes, because for 300 years every cadet understood implicitly that we meant one weapon. It never occurred to us to say only one because no species would naturally make more. But humans do, Lyra said, apparently. Vorn pulled up more files on human history. He read about something called the Cold War, where two human nations competed to build enough nuclear weapons to destroy their entire planet multiple times over. Not once, multiple times? The concept was insane. He read about human soldiers who carried primary weapons, secondary weapons, backup weapons, knives, grenades, and more. Redundancy upon redundancy. He read about human explorers who packed supplies for every possible disaster, even unlikely ones. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, their saying went. It is cultural, Vorn concluded. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on Earth. They were not the strongest or fastest predators. They survived through endurance and preparation. They could not afford to specialize. They had to be ready for everything. That sounds exhausting, Set commented. For them, it is normal. On screen, Daehyun finished his ration bar and stood. He began testing each weapon one final time. The sling, he spun it overhead and released a stone that flew straight and far. The spear, he threw it at a target rock and it struck solidly. The bow, he drew and released an arrow that hit exactly where he aimed. One by one, he tested all 24 weapons. Each one performed correctly. Each one served its purpose. Vorn watched this systematic testing and felt something shift in his understanding. This human was not showing off. He was not trying to impress anyone. This was simply how he approached problems. Make a weapon. Make many weapons. More options meant better survival. It was logical from a human perspective. 15 minutes until retrieval, the technician announced, throughout the testing zones. Other cadets prepared their single weapons for presentation. They felt confident, proud. They had completed the task successfully. None of them knew what waited in Zone 23. None of them knew that the standards had just changed. Daehyun packed his weapons carefully into a makeshift rucksack he had woven from plant fibers. Some weapons hung from his belt. Others went into the pack. He organized them efficiently, making sure nothing would break during transport. He checked his knife, rope, and canteen. All accounted for. Good. Then he stood in his zone and waited for the retrieval shuttle. The red beacon began blinking, signaling the approaching end of the test. Daehyun looked at the ground around him. Nearly every useful material had been gathered and transformed. He had used his resources wisely. Nothing wasted. Everything purposeful. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. Good work, boy. But next time, maybe make 25. Daehyun smiled. The shuttle descended from the sky. The main assembly hall buzzed with conversation as cadets returned from the moon surface. Retrieval shuttles landed one by one, depositing tired but satisfied students. Each cadet carried their weapon with pride. Teeman emerged first, his massive club resting on his shoulder. The Gorvax instructor nodded approvingly. Good weight distribution. Solid construction. Exactly what was expected from his species. Hannah stepped off her shuttle with elegant grace, holding her bow carefully. The Velthian instructor examined the craftsmanship and smiled. Perfect symmetry. Beautiful work. She would receive high marks. More cadets arrived. Each presented their weapon at the assessment table. A Krellian showed his polished blade. A Theron displayed her javelin. A Mordian carried a heavy mace. Standard results. Successful completions. The instructors made notes. Checked functionality. Assigned preliminary grades. Everything proceeded normally. Mireille arrived and set down her dart system. The biology instructor examined the venom coating and nodded with approval. Creative use of local fauna. Well done. Thank you, sir. Mireille looked around the hall. Has Daehyun returned yet? Zone 23? Not yet. His shuttle is landing now. Mireille smiled. She was curious to see what her friend had built. Knowing Daehyun, probably something practical and well-made. Nothing fancy, but reliable. Outside, the shuttle from Zone 23 touched down on the landing pad. The rear hatch opened with a hiss. Daehyun stepped out, carrying a bulging rucksack on his back. More items hung from his belt. He looked like a traveling merchant, not a cadet returning from a simple test. The landing supervisor blinked in fusion. "Cadet, did you salvage equipment from your zone?" "No, sir." "These are my weapons." "Weapons? Plural?" "Yes, sir." The supervisor checked his datapad. The test was to make a weapon. One weapon. The instructions did not specify a maximum number, sir. Daehyun's face remained neutral. "I made multiple weapons with available materials." "How many is multiple?" 24, sir. "Plus some component parts for 3 more I did not finish?" The supervisor stared. Then he activated his communicator. "Instructor Vorn? You need to see this." In the assembly hall, Vorn received the message. He had been expecting this. He had watched the human work for hours. But seeing it in person would be different. "All cadets remain in the hall," Vorn announced. "Cadet Daehyun is arriving with his submission." The hall quieted. Cadets exchanged curious glances. Why the special announcement? Mireille felt a flutter of concern. Had something gone wrong? Was Daehyun in trouble? The main doors opened. Daehyun walked in, his rucksack heavy on his shoulders. Every eye turned toward him. He walked to the assessment table and set down his pack with a solid thump. "Cadet Daehyun reporting, sir." Test completed. Vorn approached the table. His antennae twitched with anticipation. "Show us what you have made." Daehyun nodded. He opened his rucksack and began unpacking. One weapon at a time, he placed them on the long assessment table. "Sling," he said, setting down the first item. "Effective range 30 meters. Can use stones or metal projectiles." "Spear," he continued. 2-meter reach. Balanced for throwing or thrusting. Knife, short sword. Throwing axe. The weapons kept coming. The hall grew quieter with each addition. Bow with 7 arrows. Crossbow with bolt projectiles. Blowgun with 10 darts. Cadets leaned forward, staring in disbelief. How was this possible? Bola, weighted net. Garrote wire. Timon's jaw hung open. His single club suddenly felt inadequate. Throwing knives, set of 3. Short club. Studded club. Morning star. Hannah stood frozen. Her beautiful bow was just one of many weapons. Just one small piece of a much larger arsenal. Flamethrower, single use. Explosive device with fuse. Strangling cord. Vorn counted each item carefully. His mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The human's voice continued calmly as if this were perfectly normal. And finally, this weighted chain weapon. I'm not sure of the formal name in Standard Galactic. Daehyun stepped back from the table. 24 weapons lay arranged in neat rows. Different types? Different purposes. All functional. The assembly hall was completely silent. Vorn found his voice. You made all of these? In 6 hours? Yes, sir. With only the materials in your zone? Yes, sir. And your basic survival kit? Yes, sir. I can show you my documentation. Daehyun pulled out his notebook. I recorded the construction process for each weapon, including materials used and time spent. Vorn took the notebook with trembling hands. He opened it and saw detailed diagrams, notes in both English and Standard Galactic, precise measurements, and efficiency calculations. Lyra moved closer to the table. She picked up the bow and examined it. This is quality work. Any one of these would be sufficient for the test. Thank you, Instructor. Why did you make so many? Daehyun hesitated. The question seemed obvious to him, but he could see the genuine confusion in their faces. More weapons provide more options. Different situations require different tools. If one weapon fails or is lost, I have backups. This improves survival probability. But the test required only one weapon, Sek said. You exceeded the parameters significantly. The parameters said to make a weapon, sir. They did not prohibit making additional weapons. I had time and materials remaining, so I continued working. Myra laughed suddenly. The sound broke the tension in the hall. Everyone looked at her. Sorry, she said, still smiling. It is just so typically human. Give us a task and we will not stop until we run out of time, materials, or energy. Usually all three at once. A few other cadets chuckled nervously, but most still stared at the arsenal on the table. Teeman approached Dae-Hyen. I do not understand. How did you work so fast? I organized my materials first, Dae-Hyen explained. Then I worked on multiple projects simultaneously. While one component dried or set, I worked on another weapon. Efficient time management? But the skill required practice, Dae-Hyen said simply. My grandfather taught me. We built things together since I was young. Tools, weapons, repairs. Always making something. Vorn set down the notebook. He picked up each weapon carefully, testing balance and construction. Every single one met or exceeded combat standards. Some were crude, but functional. Others showed remarkable craftsmanship. I need to verify something, Vorn said. Did you use any unauthorized tools or materials? No, sir. Did you receive any outside help or communication? No, sir. Did you know about this test in advance? Only the general briefing all cadets receive, sir. Same information as everyone else? Vorn activated his datapad and pulled up the monitoring footage. He played sections showing Dae-Hyen's work process. No cheating. No shortcuts. Just steady, efficient crafting. It appears, Vorn said slowly, that Cadet Dae-Hyen has completed the assignment. Exceptionally, the hall erupted in noise. Cadets argued, questioned, and exclaimed. Some accused Dae-Hyen of unfair advantage. Others defended him. The instructors called for order. Vorn raised his hands for silence. Cadet Dae-Hyen followed all rules. He used only approved materials. He worked alone. He simply approached the task differently than we anticipated. Because he is human, Lyra added quietly. Yes, because he is human. Vorn turned to Dae-Hyen. In 40 years of teaching, I have never seen anything like this. I do not know what grade to assign you because you have broken every curve we use for measurement. Dae-Hyen stood at attention. I apologize if I caused problems, sir. You did not cause problems. You caused confusion and perhaps a necessary reassessment of our assumptions. Vorn looked at the other instructors. We need to discuss this. Cadet Dae-Hyen, you are dismissed. Return to your quarters. Yes, sir. Dae-Hyen began packing his weapons back into the rucksack. Myra hurried over to help. 24 weapons? She whispered in Korean. Really? I had time, he replied in the same language. Why waste it? She shook her head, grinning. The galaxy is not ready for humans. They will adjust. As Dae-Hyen left the hall with his arsenal, the other cadets parted to let him through. Some looked at him with awe, others with suspicion. A few with something like fear. Vorn watched him go, then turned to his fellow instructors. We need to file a report to Coalition Command. They must understand what humans are capable of. Is this capability, Lyra asked softly, an asset or a threat? Yes, Vorn replied. The answer hung in the air, unresolved and troubling. 3 days after the test, official results posted throughout the academy. Cadets crowded around display screens in common areas, checking their grades. Dae-Hyen walked to the board alone. He found his name easily. It appeared at the very top of the list. Cadet Dae-Hyen Zone 23, score 847 100ths. He stared at the number. 847 points. Out of 100 possible, other cadets noticed and began whispering. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else walked away shaking their head. The scoring system had broken because of one human. Myra found him there. Did you see? Yes? You know what this means? I broke their system. You destroyed their system, she corrected. The second highest score is Hana with 96 points. You have almost 9 times her score. The multiplication factor for quantity was higher than I expected. Myra punched his shoulder lightly. Stop being modest. You made history. You proved that humans do not play by the same rules as everyone else. Dae-Hyeon considered this. I just followed the instructions. Exactly, and that terrifies them. She was right. Over the next few days, Dae-Hyeon noticed the changes. Instructors watched him more carefully during classes. Cadets gave him extra space in hallways. Even Timon, who could crush rocks with his bare hands, seemed wary around the quiet human, who made weapons like other people made lunch. But the biggest change came from above. 2 weeks after the test, Instructor Vorn called Dae-Hyeon to his office. The human entered and stood at attention. At ease, cadet, Vorn said. Sit. We need to discuss your future. Dae-Hyeon sat in the chair designed for human proportions. Vorn's office had upgraded recently to accommodate more species. Your test results caused significant discussion at Coalition Command, Vorn began. We submitted full reports, including video documentation. Military analysts have reviewed everything. Am I in trouble, sir? No, quite the opposite. Vorn pulled up files on his display. Command has ordered a complete review of human psychological profiles and capabilities. Your test demonstrated something we did not fully understand about your species, that we make many weapons instead of one, that you approach problems through multiplication rather than optimization. Vorn turned the screen so Dae-Hyeon could see. Look at this data. We analyzed test results from all human cadets over the past 3 years. On average, humans produce 2.7 weapons per test. We thought this was individual variation. Now we understand it is cultural default. The screen showed graphs and charts. Human scores clustered far above other species' averages. But most humans only made 2 or 3 weapons, Dae-Hyeon observed. I made 24, yes, and that created another question. We interviewed other human cadets. Want to know what they said? Dae-Hyeon waited. They said they stopped early because they did not want to stand out. They made a few weapons to feel comfortable, then forced themselves to stop. They self-limited to avoid appearing abnormal. Dae-Hyeon thought about this. It made sense. Humans were new to the coalition. Many felt pressure to fit in, to not cause problems. He had simply not cared about that. Your grandfather, Vorn continued, reading from a file, Park Jun-ho, former military engineer. Survival instructor, he taught you these skills? Yes, sir. Since I was 6 years old? And he encouraged making multiple tools? Always. He said having one solution was gambling. Having many solutions was planning? Vorn's antennae drooped in what Dae-Hyeon now recognized as thoughtful agreement. Your grandfather survived 3 wars on Earth. I read his service record. Do you know what our analysts found most interesting? No, sir. In those wars, human forces consistently carried more equipment than any other military in galactic history. A single human soldier often bore weapons. Ammunition, backup weapons, survival tools, medical supplies, communications devices, and more. Sometimes 30 kilograms of equipment. That is standard for military operations, sir, not for most species. A Velthian soldier carries their weapon and minimal support gear. A Gorvax carries even less because they rely on natural strength. Most species specialize. Humans generalize and then carry everything they might possibly need. Vorn pulled up more data. Historical records from Earth, images of soldiers loaded with gear, vehicles packed with supplies, bases stockpiled with redundant systems. We found something else, Vorn said quietly. During your Cold War, your species built enough nuclear weapons to destroy your entire planet 12 times over. Not once. 12 times. Why? Dae-Hyeon had studied this in history class. To ensure complete deterrence. If one system failed, another would still function. Redundancy guaranteed survival. You say that so calmly. It is logical from a survival perspective, sir. Vorn made a sound that the translator rendered as bitter laughter. Logical, yes. From a human perspective, it is logical to prepare for every possible disaster simultaneously. From our perspective, it seems like paranoia. Is that why you called me here? To discuss human psychology? No, Vorn closed the files. I called you here to deliver an offer. Coalition Special Operations has requested your transfer to their advanced program. You would leave the academy immediately and begin specialized training. Daehyun felt surprise. I am only in my first year. They do not care. They want to study human tactical thinking. More importantly, they want to train you before you develop any bad habits from our standard curriculum. Bad habits. They think our teaching methods might limit human potential. They want to see what humans can do without artificial restrictions. It was an honor, a huge opportunity. Daehyun knew he should feel excited. Instead, he felt uncomfortable. Sir, I would like to decline. Vorn's antennae shot up. Decline? This is an incredible offer, I know, sir. But I want to complete my training with my unit. Hana, Timan, Mireille, and the others, we are a team. You could be so much more than, sir, with respect, I am not special. I am just human. Any human with proper training could do what I did. Maybe not 24 weapons, but many weapons. It is how we think. Vorn studied him for a long moment. You truly believe that, yes, sir? Then you do not understand what you represent. Vorn stood and walked to the window overlooking the training grounds. The coalition has existed for 3,000 years. We have 47 member species. We have seen thousands of civilizations. But we have never encountered a species like yours. I do not understand, sir. Every species in the galaxy evolved with some advantage. The Velthians have grace. The Gorvaks have strength. The Krellians have precision. Each species knows their strength and builds their culture around it. Vorn turned back to face Daehyun. Humans have no such advantage. You are not the strongest, fastest, or most intelligent species. But you refuse to accept limitations. You approach every problem as if the answer is always more. Is that bad? We do not know yet. Vorn returned to his desk. But it changes things. Military doctrine assumes each species will contribute their specialty. We plan accordingly, but humans do not have a specialty. You do everything adequately and then do more of it than anyone expects. Daehyun thought about his grandfather again. The old man who survived wars, built tools, and never threw anything away. Who taught that preparation was not paranoia, but wisdom. Sir, I still want to stay with my unit. Vorn sighed. Very well. I will inform Special Operations of your decision. But understand that you have changed things here, whether you wanted to or not. Changed how? Next year's survival test will have modified instructions. Make a weapon. Only one, maximum. Because of you, we must now specify limits. Daehyun felt a smile tug at his lips. You think that will stop human cadets from preparing extras? No, Vorn admitted. I suspect they will make one primary weapon and then a dozen tools that could technically be used as weapons. Humans are excellent at finding loopholes. It is a survival trait, sir. Yes, that is what concerns us. Daehyun left the office and returned to his quarters. Mireille found him there an hour later. I heard you turned down Special Operations, she said. How did you? Everyone knows. It is all over the cadet network. She sat on his bunk. Why did you refuse? I want to stay with the team. The team that now looks at you like you are some kind of tactical genius? That will pass. They will adjust? Mireille laughed. You really do not see it, do you? You changed everything. Before you, humans were just new members of the coalition. Interesting but not particularly important. Now? Now they are reconsidering everything about us? Because I made too many weapons. Because you showed them what humans do naturally, we do not give up. We do not accept limitations. We keep pushing until we run out of resources or time. Daehyun considered this. Grandfather always said that determination was humanity's real superpower. He was right. 3 months later, Daehyun took leave and returned to Earth. He traveled to the small house outside Seoul where his grandfather lived. The old man was in his workshop, as always, building something from scrap metal. Grandfather, Daehyun called in Korean. Park Junho looked up, his weathered face breaking into a smile. The soldier returns. How was your test? They asked me to make a weapon. I made 24. The old man laughed, a deep sound full of pride. 24, good, but why not 25? I ran low on materials. Excuses. His grandfather gestured around the cluttered workshop. There are always more materials. Always more possibilities.